Hi everyone, Father Christmas here with Rhyme Signatures, the nerdiest music review this side of being holly, jolly, and maybe a teensy bit off my trolley. And today we're going to be doing a review of the new Moon Safari album, Himlabacken, Volume 2. There have been moments in my time on this earth where music has moved me past the point of description, where even I, as wordy and pretentious as I often am, find myself utterly gobsmacked to the point where all I can adequately articulate is a single line of drool and a look of slack-jawed amazement. I can count these moments on less than 2 hands, and each time has left an irreversible mark on my very soul. When I think about these albums, these songs, my heart soars, I get jitters just musing on some of the melodies, and I feel warmed in ways that even the strongest fire can't replicate. The Swedish band Moon Safari happened to be one of the bands most responsible for these moments, and one of the songs in question happens to be Other Half of the Sky, the 32-minute-long penultimate song off of their sophomore album Blomljud. To describe this song as one of the most perfect compositions in the world of progressive music isn't even close to touching the sides. This is the song I want to use to narrate my life, to tell the history of who I am and explain to the world the kind of emotional depth and scope that my mind spans and covers. It's one of the most remarkable recordings ever made, a rare example of the perfect song, and from the very first instant that I heard it, I knew that my heart would belong to Moon Safari for all time. I, of course, immediately followed their output with a frenetic glee, gobbling up every single morsel the band would release. And as much as Other Half of the Sky split my soul in twain, it was when their follow-up album Lover's End came out in 2010 that these Swedish masters would tear my heart out of my chest and shatter me into 1,000 pieces with A Kid Called Panic. I genuinely struggle to listen to this song even today. It's the kind of heartbreaking that's difficult to put into words. The lyricism, the pain and anguish in the melody and message is all too familiar, too personal and too relatable at times, that I can't help but see some of the lowest times of my life in it. But I also can't look away once it starts. It's the simplest and easiest way to cause me to sob uncontrollably, but it's simultaneously one of the most cathartic songs I've ever listened to. Without getting too much into my personal life, it has been a rough few months towards the end of 2023, and whenever I've needed to cry, whenever I've needed to let go and allow emotions to overwhelm me, I've been able to turn to Moon Safari. More so than any other band I regularly listen to, they've been able to satisfy that need for emotional displacement. So imagine how hard it's been waiting the 10 long years it's been between volumes 1 and 2 of Himlabacken. In 2013, the band released what felt like an unintentional farewell with Himlabacken Volume 1. When you call an album Volume 1, it's reasonable to assume that a second part is waiting somewhere in the wings. So we waited, and every little shred of information and tidbit of news unfortunately came with the disappointment that we simply didn't know when Volume 2 was going to be coming out. I kinda began to lose hope, resolving myself to the disappointing reality that we were never going to get a follow-up, and that Moon Safari as a band was done. I kept dreading the inevitable message on their social media that they'd decided to call it quits, that they simply couldn't carry on as a band, and we'd never see that oft-teased sequel to one of their finest albums. But, kids, it's here! It's finally real, and honestly, I'm just as surprised as the rest of you. I remember mentioning in my review of the new Closure in Moscow album that having such a long, protracted gap between albums, especially sequel albums, comes with its own inherent risks. In 10 years, we can change so much as people. The artists and musicians we love can change so much as people. What we love musically is subject to change, and what musicians want to create is subject to change. So, the nerves I was feeling prior to this album coming out were pretty strong. I had been going through a revisit of the band's discography before digesting this one, and I was very relieved that my love for classic Moon Safari was still as strong as ever. But that did mean that I was concerned that 10 years of silence might result in a changed band who reinvented themselves for a modern audience and left the majority of what made them behind. I was extremely relieved that Moon Safari have managed the impossible. simultaneously managing to retain their identity, their unique mark on the progressive world, while managing to successfully explore new and exciting sounds to them, while adopting influences I would never have expected from them, and incorporating them in such a tastefully, well-executed manner. It feels like this is what the band was always destined to become. It's a natural evolution of their sound, a fluidic display of the blending of genre, style and type, without ever losing sight of what made them so important to me. And I am all here for this revised and updated sound that they're showing off on Himlabacken Volume 2. So, what's this all about? The album kicks off with the appropriately named 1980X Heaven Hill, and we are almost immediately treated to some synth taken directly from the Van Halen playbook of Jump, setting the tone for 80s familiarity and nostalgia. The guitars are bright and crisp, the vocals heartwarming and familiar, for those delightful harmonies we've come to associate with the band are in full swing. As the band croons, "Welcome back to Heaven Hill" to the listener. It's their knowledge of how long it's been, how much we've been waiting for this moment, and how they've been able to translate this into the opening of the album that elevates this from what could have just as easily been a generic prog rock atmospheric opening number into a genuine banger, and one I can't wait to see how it affects crowds in any upcoming live performances. The first of the big tracks on the album was the first single released from it as well, in the form of Between the Devil and Me. And as much as I was partly hoping for this to be a cheeky Moon Safari take on Between the Buried and Me, alas it was not to be. What it is, however, is possibly one of the strongest, boldest and most indicative songs of their new and revised sound. It's gentle, almost melancholy and menacing in its opening minute, as this haunting piano line lulls you into the song before a building, crunching guitar riff kicks in and a soaring, grandiose melody sweeps you off your feet into yet another 80s-inspired section. It's an incredible start, and only gets better and better as the vocals cut across the music. There's a slight edge and darkness to it all, emphasised by much crunchier guitars than we've been led to expect from the band. But then the chorus hits with the vocal harmonies, and it feels like I've been transported back in time to when I first found the band. It is massive, epic, swelling, and utterly bewitching. I mean, honestly, I just get goosebumps even thinking about it. It is structurally not dissimilar to a lot of modern prog mini-epics, following that kind of intro to verse, to chorus to verse, to chorus to instrumental section, to verse to chorus and close. But the band manages to handle every single element of the production and style and composition as utter masters of their craft. The drums, the guitars, the synth, the bass, it's all immaculate. The production is pristine, with each element feeling like it's given equal heading on the playbill. But as always with the band, it's the vocals that really stand out. But for me, this is really evident on the second single of Emma Come On. I know a lot of people in social media discourse have been sort of semi-dismissing this track as being the boring, short, predictable pop number of the album. You know, the safe single, whatever the hell that means. But as a man with a massive musical chubby for Elton John, I can feel so much of his influence on this track. The vocals, the little whoa-whoa-whoas, it all feels so Madman Across the Water that I get this little internal squeal of excitement the second I hear the opening of the song kick in. As much as the harmonies of the vocals are unquestionably the band's signature style, it's the individual vocal moments on this song that really indicates to me how much the band has grown, and how comfortable they've become in allowing each other to shine, as, my god, some of the vocal runs in isolation here are just incredible. To have this much talent behind the microphone in one band almost feels unfair to everyone else. It's an incredibly fun song, really showcasing the playful nature of the band, especially after the pretty dark Between the Devil and Me. We move on from here to a much slower, more intimate song with A Lifetime to Learn How to Love, and it's every bit as emotional as the track name suggests. There's a softness to this track that we've not heard since the band's earlier days, and it feels like a message to the world. There's this kind of beautiful, swirling, summer morning vibe to the entire first half of the song, as we're led down this powerful, glimmering pathway towards an enormous stage. There's a certain 90s to 2000s boy band quality to this, and I mean that in a very positive way. I can almost picture this being sung by Westlife, Take That, or Wet Wet Wet, and it not feel weird. It's a slow-burning, deliberate, delicate ballad, earning every second of its 8.5-minute runtime, and that epic crescendo in the second half as it builds in its cinematic scope and scale is absolutely heart-stopping. I pretty quickly put this song on my wedding playlist, and if that's not enough of a glowing commendation, I don't know what is. Beyond the Blue feels like the most fillery of the tracks here, focusing mostly on choral arrangements, but it earns its place on the album easily. It's got this kind of, gothic Christmas vibe going on, full of the kind of Gregorian chanting I associate with this time of year. It's a short but sweet palate cleanser, leading nicely into Blood Moon. This is one of the shorter main tracks on the album, and I'm almost immediately given U2 vibes in the opening guitars. But it's when we get into the meat of things that I'm reminded so much of some of Neil Morse's solo work that were it not for the vocals, you could have convinced me this was off Similitude of a Dream or something. It's got a great sense of groove, the entire song being carried by a toe-tapping melody that's almost impossible to sit still to. It's one of the catchiest songs on the album and a great one to introduce the band to people with. But now we need to address the elephant in the room. The 21-minute long epic of Teen Angel Meets the Apocalypse. Now, something you need to understand is that Moon Safari has a tremendous track record when it comes to the long-form epic. We Spin the World, Other Half of the Sky, Lover's End Part 3, all exquisite masterpieces, but I honestly think that Teen Angel might be their greatest epic yet. What sets this one aside from their previous epics is how much the band throws out the established norms for what we might have come to expect. This is unlike anything else the band has ever done, at times feeling more like a Lost Dream Theatre song from the early 2000s than a Moon Safari one. The Haunted Mansion-style waltzy intro gives off a Count of Tuscany vibe before the band starts trading off guitars against synths in a classic early 2000s progressive metal style. And that's honestly the biggest takeaway from the opening of this song, is just how prog metal it feels compared to the softer, gentler, more prog rock style that the band is usually so accustomed to. I love how it keeps throwing in these stylistically similar Petrucci and Rudess moments while giving off this feeling of an epic Halloween anthem. But then it's gentle again, soft and delicate like fine-boned china, as we re-enter familiar territory for the band, but it makes the transition so elegantly that it doesn't feel jarring in any way. The central melody is absolutely stunning, with some of the most heartfelt vocal runs on the entire album. It is warm, fulfilling, and stunningly beautiful. There's signs of this becoming a future Christmas song classic for me, as the band encourages to ring our bells for days gone by. You can practically feel the snowfall and taste the glühwein. But then wait, oh shit, we're back into metal territory again, as the band don their Dream Theatre hats once more and plumb the depths of spooky season, as we caper along to these demented and sinister instrumental runs. I'm starting to think that this song could very well be the Nightmare Before Christmas of progressive rock epics. The piano keys are very Dick Dastardly, coming across as a mustache-twirling villain, which is leaned into heavily by the rest of the instrumentation and vocal delivery. It's almost like the band heard the Lord Nefarious parts of Dream Theater's The Astonishing and were like, yeah, let's do that, but we'll actually make it good. It's such a wild experience to hear a band like Moon Safari playing with these sounds, embracing the fully armed and operational battle station that is progressive metal cheese. But it turns out that these Swedes are master dairy farmers as well as consummate musicians, as this kind of cheese is not only exceptionally well done, it manages to lean so hard into it that it completely dodges any of the associated pitfalls with this kind of fromage. The lyrics are fantastic, they never linger too hard or too long on any one crutch, and it makes for a fascinating and deeply rewarding middle section of the song. But we're not done yet! Oh no, not yet! You want the Beatles? Oh yeah, we got the Beatles. Suddenly John fucking Lennon rears his head and starts singing about London Bridge falling down. It's such a remarkable handbrake turn that you'll never see coming, but indicating such an astonishing stylistic whiplash that this could only ever happen in a progressive rock song, and only Moon Safari could make this sound so good. But then we're into David Gilmour guitars for days as the band embraces their inner Pink Floyd with one of the most expertly measured and masterfully crafted guitar solos I've ever heard in a prog rock epic. The way it segues into a massive section of vocal harmonies and church organs is breathtaking, and I've still not emotionally recovered from it. Baby, we don't need religion because we've got rock and roll. Can I get an amen? The little leitmotifs to London Bridge falling down, and then the enormous piano, the horn section, the epic building climax as we are once again asked to ring our bells for better days. God, I cannot handle it. I'm bawling my eyes out and screaming along to the lyrics at the top of my lungs. It is a masterstroke, a pure and uncompromising work of art and worth the 10-year wait alone, but the album still has a couple more tricks up its sleeve. Penultimate song of Forever For You is another incredible piece and final of the 3 songs that pierce the 10-minute mark. This feels a bit more classical Moon Safari, giving familiar vibes to some of the songs on Blomljud. It's whimsical, it's friendly, it's open, honest and cheerful. It's got a vibe of a beautiful summer's day, buffeting the listener along with these gentle, breezy melodies, but not being afraid to embrace its inner Disney princess with how overblown and epic it all feels. The saxophone solo at around the midway point is a delightful surprise and strikes me as to how much I'd like to hear more of this in Moon Safari's music, so if you're watching guys, more of this please. The band continue to obliterate me emotionally with lines like, "The only thing that lasts forever is the love that we leave when we're gone," but what sets this song aside though is how the back half really throws in all of the band's instrumental chops, showcasing that these guys are so much more than just a pretty a cappella band with some guitars thrown in for good measure. Everyone here has clearly taken the approach of exchanging glances and simultaneously deciding that now is the time to blow the roof off with their instruments. And good grief, what an ending. But there's a few minutes left to go, and the band embrace their native Swedish on the final track, Epilogue, once again hearkening to the churchy, Christmassy feeling that so many parts of the album have alluded to. It feels like a cold, wintry morning, the whole village gathering to celebrate and pay homage before returning home with their families, snuggled up by the fireside with nothing but the love they have for each other, and how much that love has translated to this album. So, what else can I say about Moon Safari's Himlabacken Volume 2? At the start of this review I talked about music that has moved me beyond description, and it's safe to say that this album has joined that pantheon. This is more than a sequel to Volume 1. This is a next-generational statement from the band. As they have grown as people in the last 10 years, so has the music. There's a depth and maturity to the songwriting that I felt was slightly missing in their earlier works. It feels like the events of the last 10 years, the difficulties the band has faced, the changes to their lives, starting families, becoming fathers, having priorities shift and change focus, but ultimately allowing one single thing to pierce through to the forefront of the music. Love. This album is love, pure and simple. Love for family, love for friends, love for those we've lost, and love for those who've stuck by the band, and never have I felt that kind of love come through so strongly in an album. This is one of the warmest, most delicate, honest and caring records I've ever listened to. There's so much new blood and new ideas on display here, but it's tempered with a deep respect and understanding of what got them to where they are now. Himlabacken Volume 2 is one of the finest albums of the 2020s and absolutely unmissable. Get a physical copy, get your friends a physical copy, buy physical copies to give out to strangers and me on the street. This album needs to be heard by everyone, as it could very well be the one that changes a life. This is all, of course, my opinion, guys, as you know, so if you have listened to Himlabacken Volume 2, please tell me what you thought about the record in the comments down below. If you did like this video, please do share it around with anyone else who you think would possibly enjoy it, and please do consider subscribing to the channel for more content. I'll be leaving my link tree down below, where you will find all the usual places to find me on social media, as well as a link to my Ko-fi page if you're feeling particularly generous and want to help support the growth of the channel. Until next time, guys, keep your rhyme signatures extremely odd.